there, it's Brita Wynn, and I am here to talk about Viridis Genii today for Ask a Witch. And I have to start by saying, of all of the magical, witchy, fairy, and academic events I've been to in my life, this one was one of the most unique, one of the most interesting, and also very, I would say, enlightening. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about my experience with that and share with you some of the gems that I took home from that experience. And hopefully, if you get a chance, you'll be able to check that out maybe next year when they do it again. So when I first got interested in Viridis Genii, I looked at the price, and it was quite a lot. It's like $530, and then there are workshops that range anywhere from $35 to $65, and I think you can do up to 4 of those over the course of a weekend. And they are furtherings of some of the lectures, like a person will do a lecture on a particular topic, and then the workshop will be an activity around that topic. And so I was only able to afford 2 of the workshops, but I thought they were both great. And I was able to attend all of the lectures, though there was some stuff going on in my personal life that made it hard to focus on the first couple on Saturday. So the first talk that happened was Friday the 6th, and we went to the location, which was the Pack Forest in Eatonville, California, Washington, sorry. And the keynote speaker for that evening was Jeremy Bocelli, who does, he's a virologist. He's a guy who studies diseases, and he does that in Galveston, Texas. So he has a PhD in biological sciences, and very, very knowledgeable person. And he talked about magical medicine for pox and plague. And I was a little stunned at first, because I thought, wow, here's this science guy who's, talking all about the plague and smallpox, and we saw some pictures of all of those and got some statistics of what the death rates were, and then he talked about the different gods and goddesses that were offerings were left to during the times when these things were really big and going on. Talked about smallpox being everywhere but the New World until Columbus came here and brought it, and talked about the herbs that people used to try to combat it. The statistics are that 60% of Europe died of the Black Plague, which was a number I hadn't heard before, so that's an incredible 60%. So one of the things he said, some of the gems that he conveyed, was that all of us there most of us were European descended, and that our families must have known something, which is why we survived and are here today. So some of those herbs may have been really helpful. And also the spiritual and mental aspect of dealing with disease too. We know that placebos work 50% of the time because people believe that they will, and yet we rarely tap into that power in medical science. When we go to the doctor, they don't ever tell you to do a mantra or do a meditation or believe in your cure. They just give you a drug and send you home. And so, one of the things he said was that, we need to remember these old techniques that we used to survive the plague the first time, because when the next one comes, because another one will, because they always do, it would be great to have this spiritual and herbal and scientific knowledge in order to combat them. And so I thought that was really a wonderful marriage of the sacred and the spiritual and the scientific. So that was a fabulous talk. I was pretty much buzzing when I had to go home that evening. I didn't stay the night at the event like most people do, because my arthritis is just bad enough that it hurts too much to sleep in a bunk bed. So I went home in the evenings. The next morning, On Saturday, there were a group of talks. The first talk that was had was Cody Dickerson, and it was sickle and sheaf, plants, metals, and their interaction in history, folklore, and magic. And he talked about the properties of iron and where iron comes from and the magicalness of it, and where iron should be used in cutting herbs and where it should not be used, where things like silver or copper should be used, and how the plants respond to those metals. So that was pretty interesting. I missed some of that because I was dealing with, again, a personal matter, but I will be reading the lecture when I get the write-up from the event, because they do have a book that has everything in it pretty much from each event. And I actually got the first two, and I'm going to order the second two as soon as I get paid. The first one was from the first year. It's called Verdant Gnosis, Cultivating the Green Path, and I started reading that today, which is from their first Viridis Genii. And then the second one, which was from year 2, and this one is all the talks from then. And then there's one from year 3 and year 4 also, which is this year. So year 4 will have the stuff that I missed, which is nice because, when you have that many talks, sometimes things are going on or there's emergencies or whatever that you can't necessarily access, your awareness to be able to deal with what's going on around you and also the stuff that you're dealing with personally, and that was my situation. So I missed some of that talk, sadly, but I did get a chance to talk to him a little bit later on. He had some metal work that he had brought. He was trained as a blacksmith, so had a lot of knowledge about the magic that goes with that. A lot of people don't realize that being a blacksmith is a very magical, alchemical kind of reality, and there's a lot of incredible magic that goes with that. And so we talked about that quite a bit. And then there was a talk by a person, Jesse Hathaway Diaz, and he talked about Iroko. Iroko is the world tree, and talked about the worship of trees and the spirits, the green spirit in trees in Africa and in Brazil and other countries, and how when people moved from one country to another, how they brought that magic with them and then superimposed that spirit being onto trees that were there, because the tree that originally was assigned as the world tree was in Africa and was the teak. So there's a lot of stuff like that, and he's a very knowledgeable speaker. Actually had quite a lot of anthropological data on the worship of trees and the tree magic and tree consciousness and everything really about trees as spiritual beings, and it was really just beautiful. So another one that I didn't get to hear everything of because of what I was going through, but again, I will be reading that because I don't want to miss any of it. And then in the evening, we had there was a workshop that we had after lunch, and that was the one that I did was the Hildegard workshop. There were other workshops too. The two that were session 1 were the folk magic of Hildegard von Bingen's herbs, and also runic healing and herbal correspondences. And the one I attended was Hildegard. I knew some stuff about Hildegard already, but I've always thought Hildegard was amazing. I learned about Hildegard from my first herbal teacher, and listened to some of the music she wrote. She was a composer. She was a healer. She was a visionary. She had what was referred to at that time as fire in the head, and she would have these migraine headaches, and then she would have visions, which included music and all kinds of things. But she was born at a time before the witch trials, so she wasn't really given too much crap about it. She was born in 1100 AD, and so she did not have to deal with all the sexism and stuff. Plus she was a nun, so she was fairly cloistered within the church. But the things that she contributed, some of the herbal stuff that she talks about, you read it and go, okay, not sure I understand how that works. But most of the stuff, I have a couple of her medical books from when I was studying with my previous teacher, and there's a lot of really great remedies and information about how the herbs work and how to apply them that come from that time before herbs and herbalists and herb spirits and magic were disparaged by the Catholic Church. So there's a lot of Inquisition knowledge, which I'm finding right now, since Viridis Genii, there's a lot of knowledge to be had there that has been overlooked or forgotten or rewritten, especially on things like some of the great healing herbs, some of the ones that my teachers called the great green teachers, like henbane and belladonna and herbs like that. And so I have some stuff to say about that a little bit later in the vlog. So calling back the soul with plants, and she talked about how we can lose aspects of our soul or parts of our soul as we go through life and experience traumas and things like that. And I do know that most of the world believes in multiple souls, or that parts of souls can be lost depending upon what's going on, and that's one of the things that can cause illness. For example, the Hmong believe that you have souls of every part of your body. There are hundreds of them. And if you have a finger problem, for example, you need to have a shaman shake for you and call back the soul of that finger so that it can function again. And so this idea is a very anthropological, very cultural anthropology kind of approach to understanding healing. And she was applying this idea to modern herbalism and modern trance work and that sort of thing. And so that was really fascinating. She has done a lot of healing and talking to spirits or parts of spirits of people in that process, and helped people to retrieve parts of themselves that they had lost. And so that is fascinating from every kind of standpoint, anthropological, magical, everything. So that was a great talk. And then there was a second workshop, which I did not attend any of because I couldn't really afford it, but it was the King of Trees with Jesse. That was a further workshop, which a friend of mine went to and really, really enjoyed and said was really magical. And then A Forest as Our Forge by Cody Dickerson, who was the blacksmith. I'm sure that was fabulous. And then Ceremony of the Soul by Joyce, who did the talk on soul retrieval. So that was pretty cool too. So I wasn't able to attend those, but I heard really good things about them. And then I went home after that. There was a social event, which was mostly a lot of socializing with other people that were there at the event. There's a great kind of log cabin with a fireplace called Pack Hall, where you could go in and sit on some nice comfy chairs and just hang out and talk to friends and stuff. So that was pretty neato. And I didn't get to do that because I really needed to go home and process the things that were going on with me. And I was also in a great deal of pain. Stress creates a lot of pain for me. So I went back to my house and went to bed early. And then the next day I got up early and I went to all the talks, and I had the most magical day I think I've had in, I want to say, centuries. And so the first talk after breakfast was a woman named Karen D. Gayakamo, and she did 4 elements, learning the alphabet in the Book of Nature. And she had an approach to herbalism that was one I'd never seen before, though I imagine it's probably in some stuff that I just have missed. But she talked about how, learning herbs, you have to learn 400,000 plant species, and if you're a botanist, you got to learn all these Latin words. And there are simpler ways to categorize herbs. And I was really reminded of the Ayurveda, where there are just, the tastes, and each herb that falls into each taste, like the sweet tasting herbs, are all adaptogens. And it's very interesting when you think about that, because if you can absolutely divide herbs into certain categories, a small number of them, it makes healing much easier, especially if you don't always have every single thing that's in a recipe in a book. You know what other plants will probably work, especially if you have a little herbal knowledge to begin with. And so she had a sort of pyramid of things that she talked about. And she talked about, I don't know if you can see this, but the anima is the spirit, and the duality of the sexes, the sun and moon. And then matter and soul and spirit. And then below that, the different elements. And so dividing plants into elemental properties and being able to tell like what kind of element a plant is. And she really, I think it really helped me a lot because I've been building a medicine garden that's based on elements, and I was looking up the herbs, but some of them just didn't feel right, and some of them weren't in there. And I thought, how do I tell? And she made it very, very clear. Like watery herbs are, oval, rounded, heart-shaped, soft, moist, squishy, all those things that go with water, Fiery herbs are things that are stinging or hot, like peppers, burning, red in color, those kind of things. And so being able to look at those kind of things and look at the energies that they have, things that move the fluids of the bodies, that make the body, stimulate the body, are all fire, and so that it's kind of like the Ayurveda in that respect. So I thought that was really cool. And then she went all the way through what the end result or the spiritual reception of each plant is, like for example, air, making it to spiritual reception is gnosis and revelation. So each herb also has a spiritual aspect to it that it helps with growth and healing in that respect as well, which makes perfect sense to me because frankly, there are a lot of shamans in the world who are using plants in that way, and they get a lot of great results, and some cultures have even higher results than Western medicine. And so you have to pay attention to that, that there's something, they're obviously doing something right, that works. So the next talk was, I think, my favorite of the whole event. It was Julia Sempronponia Carreras, and she talked about the medicina. And she was from the Pyrenees, from the mountains between the Iberian Peninsula and France. And she was very interesting. She said, she's a linguist and a historian more than anything else. And she talked about the meanings of words and the use of herbs prior to, again, the witch trials, and fabulous information about the first laws that were written and why they were written, basically to procure wealth, but turned into something really horrific after that. She talked about some of the translations of some of the terms, like from the second century BC. There is a quote, Greek quote, that drugs, the word drugs, which of course meant herbs because there weren't any modern drugs at that time, are the hands of God. That herbal medicine is the hands of God. And, we have gone from the hands of God to drugs, from mitzaria to brujeria, which is the witch's herbs. And so the translation then later on becomes the idea of hands of God have turned into gift from the devil. And when you think about that, you think about the disparaging of the natural and the fearfulness of the natural. She talked about making flying ointment, and she said, these herbs are called witches' herbs and poison plants and all kinds of things like that. But the ointment wasn't called flying ointment or witches' ointment before that. It was called ointment, and they used it for everything, like hemorrhoids and skin conditions and things like that. And, a lot of the mixtures that we got recipes from the first century were things that had, for example, henbane in them. This is henbane, and I took a picture of it and posted it earlier on here. This plant is amazing. I mean, this plant is a great painkiller and an anti-inflammatory. It's also hallucinogenic. But she didn't really like the word hallucinogenic. She talked about it as being visionary. In other words, that hallucinations are things that are not true. Visions are things that are true and that we don't see unless we're in a particular state. And so this herb is pretty amazing. And we talked about this and belladonna and some of the other herbs as healing herbs, because she said, think about it, you can't just treat the illness when someone's sick. You've got to treat the pain and the difficulty that goes with it. You can't just take away the hemorrhoids but not deal with how much they hurt. And so and things like plants that were mood altering or mind altering were not as stigmatized at this time. They're stigmatized now because of corporation. We want to have people who work hard, and we don't want anyone taking a vacation mentally or otherwise. And so we have disparaged these plants that help us to sit still and focus and understand what's going on inside our minds. The herbs that have been used for healing, the entheogens and other hallucinogenic herbs, are not poison plants per se. They are not the devil's herbs, absolutely. They are the great teachers of the herbal kingdom, and they were taken from us during the Inquisition as healers. We were told they were dangerous and we would be burned if we used them or learned about them. Well, I can tell you, after listening to her talking, I was just lit on fire. I could not believe how excited I was. And then the next thing that I was going to be doing later in the day was taking her workshop, where we actually made flying ointment using this herb and wild lettuce and poplar buds and belladonna and some other things. And it's an amazing ointment. Let me tell you what. I had a thing going on with my wrist, and I've been wearing a brace for the last week, and it just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And I tried taking the brace off and putting the brace on, wrapping it up with an ace bandage, tried, ibuprofen, everything else I knew. And while we were doing the ointment, everybody was touching the ointment and rubbing the ointment on them, because that's what we witches do. And I just had this guidance to rub it all over my wrist that had been sore. And I did that, and it stopped hurting. And not only did it stop hurting, but it stopped hurting until the next day. And then I did some more, put some more on in the morning, and I put some on yesterday. And it still feels like it was injured, like there's a mild little bit of, if you move it the wrong way, it's not like painful, but kind of achy just a little. And I'm going to put some more on tonight because it really helped. It took the swelling away. It took the pain away. It fixed whatever was going on there. I don't know what the heck, because I just shut a window with my hand and suddenly my hand stopped working. And this herb was the primary ingredient, and it stopped it. It stopped it. Now, one of the things that I do also know is that there are herbs like psychedelic mushrooms and henbane and things like that have been used for depression because they help to rewire the brain in a positive way. The tryptamines that are in henbane are very euphoric and make you feel very happy. Belladonna's got like 10 things in it that are used in drugs, and it's so complicated and so powerful that I think it overwhelms the body in most cases. But we just use some leaves in the mixture, and along with many other things. And belladonna is quite a good painkiller as well. I don't want to leave her out of this conversation because I've worked with her before. She comes always into where I live. Every place I've ever lived, she shows up. And so I definitely want to mention her. But after this talk and listening to how medicine was made into poison, which was then made into the worship of Satan, I will never, ever refer to these plants in any other way than as herbal green teachers, because that's what they are. And we need to remember, it's like all the herbs that people use for women's issues and how much of that has been lost because of the stigma around controlling your own body and abortion. These herbs are our birthright. They are part of nature, and if you believe in spirituality, then they have been given to us to heal every ill that we can imagine, and we have a right to them. And so, I was really excited about that talk. And so then, after that, her talk was called Intoxication as a Vehicle Towards Illumination in Medieval Witchcraft. So before the witch burning times. So, and then we had we had the workshop that I went to with her that was on flying ointment, which I posted a picture from the Viridis Genii website, which was the one with all these beautiful these are all seed pods, you guys. I have thousands of seeds. Woo-hoo. I'm very excited about that. I'm going to plant a lot. And so the workshop with her was 3 hours, and that's what we did is we got recipes from the 11th century, or from the 11th century, flying ointment, Ugento Papillon, which was used for everything, that included things like mandrake and henbane and helichrysum, wild lettuce, burdock, blackberry leaf, black coffee seed, violet, navel wort, and which I'm not familiar with. It's also, somebody said, Venus navel wort. But it actually got narrowed down not too long after that to poplar buds, henbane, belladonna, and wild lettuce. But I can tell you that what we did was the narrowed down version, and we added a little mugwort because we all love it. So, then she let it cook until like 2 in the morning. So we started that at about 1 o'clock, 1:30 in the afternoon, and she heated it in like a water, like a double boiler kind of situation until 2 in the morning. And I actually took mine out and put it in a jar with the herbs and everything so I could let it steep for a month or so, because I know that will make it even better medicine. So I have a little half pint jar on my altar right now, and whenever I have any pain, I just stick my fingers in there and put it on there, and boy, I'll tell you what, that stuff works really, really good. And so then, so we did that, and then there was a talk by a gentleman, John Anderson, it was called 3 Worms and 5 Poisons, and it's about the esoteric reading of goo in the Chinese herbal tradition, and Chinese herbal medicine. And he was very, very astute in Chinese herbal medicine. I must say, one of the most educated and clear about the relationship between the esoterics, the energies, and the herbs. Chinese medicine is based on esoteric principles, and so it was just wonderful. And I wasn't familiar with the concept of goo, which is kind of like how you pick up energy that's bad, and you can either inherit it or pick it up somewhere, and how to get rid of it, and what herbs work for that, and what kinds of rituals you can do. And these are traditional Chinese medicine techniques. And then the last talk of the day, or of the conference, was the folk magic of Hildegard, and it was the discussion of Hildegard's work by the same person who I had done the workshop with the day before. And the workshops that were going on at the same time as the witches ointment class were elemental assignations of the trees, which was by Karen D. Gamo, and sorry, I might mispronounce this, aprotropic charms with Jeremy Bocelli. And so I didn't hear back about those ones, but they were the more expensive ones. I have to tell you that the witches Ugento Papillon class was $65 with a $20 materials fee, and I got every penny's worth. It was one of the most amazing workshops I've ever been to. And honestly, Julia is amazing. She really knows her stuff, not only from a magical standpoint, but from a historical standpoint, from a linguistic standpoint, and from a magical standpoint. And all of these people had all kinds of letters after their names. They were all very, very well educated in traditional circles, but as well, they were healers and medicine makers and teachers. And I have never been at a conference that had that many people that just blew my mind in the course of 2.5 days. So I highly recommend it. And while I was there, I got quite a bit of this, I have to say, because she let me take it, and so I took it because it was really awesome. And I also got some poplar buds too, so I want to play with those a little bit, and a little wild lettuce. I already had some belladonna, so I added some leaves to that. But the other thing too is that there were a lot of rare books. Katamara and Marcus, who run the event and own the event really, they also have a booth where they sell things. She does perfumes that are like magic spells. Oh my God, I mean, like, I don't even know how to articulate how powerful they are, but I use the Florida water perfume to help me shield myself against any more drama while I was there. And man, I felt like a pound of rocks got lifted off me. So that was cool. But she also had books that had been out of print, and books that are written for a very specific audience of herbalists who are not afraid to work with powerful herbs. And this is one of the ones that I got. And I think it's probably available on Amazon. And I've just started to read it, and it's just a mind blower. But she recommended a whole bunch of other books as well that I want to look into. So as I look into those things, I will post about them, because I just, this is I feel like my third eye has been reopened, and I feel like I've been reminded who I am and what I'm doing here. And what I'm doing here is being a healer and a crone, and what I need to do is work with these powerful medicines to promote healing and education of how to take care of a body, because we have had that taken away from us, and I think it's about time that we grab that back. So that takes us to 7 o'clock, and I hope that you enjoyed this vlog about Viridis Genii, and I encourage you to look it up and join the Facebook page so you can learn about the next one. It's really, really an incredible event, and I cannot express how amazing I think it is. There's no words really to describe it. I honestly have never been to anything so incredible. So that was great. Hi, Tina. Hi, Cassie. Hi, Tiffany. Hi, everybody. And so I'll see you not next week, because I'll be at Goddess Camp next week. So all week I'll be off grid. I won't have any cell service or anything, which will be fabulous because no one can drive me insane while I'm there. And then I will be back the next week after that to talk about herbs, or talk about art as prayer, which is something that I have studied quite a bit, and I will show you some different things that you can do as art as prayer when I come back. And also we'll be doing some stuff like that at the event, so I will video some of that so I can share that with you also. Okay, love you all. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in 2 weeks for the next Ask a Witch.